Sibanye-Stillwater is South Africa's biggest gold producer. It's one of the top 10 gold producers in the world and is also the third biggest producer of platinum and palladium in the world. Its chief executive is Neil Froneman, and we caught up with him in Roodepoort recently, where Sibanye-Stillwater is housed, although its mines are across this region, so the west of Johannesburg, and also some in the Free State, and interestingly enough, Montana in the United States, with some operations in Zimbabwe too. So lots to talk about with Neil Froneman. Neil Froneman, a bit of history lesson quickly. You're only 6 years old. You are made up, I suppose, the core of the business is the old Goldfields South Africa assets. Nick Holland at Goldfields decided he didn't want any mines in South Africa except the Albatross, that is the old Brett Kebbel mine near Carltonville. What's it called again?
South Deep.
South Deep, probably the most difficult mining asset in South Africa. They held on to that and essentially handed the rest to you. What made you think that you could run those mines better than the mighty Goldfields could?
Well, it's been my experience that where mines or assets become non-core in a company, they generally don't get the right sort of attention, and they just sort of deteriorate over a period of time. And we, as Gold One, had actually done a due diligence on Driefontein. We'd been offered the opportunity to buy Driefontein from Goldfield, so we could actually post the due diligence, see the inherent value proposition, and I actually volunteered to lead the unbundling process, which is now somewhat history. That happened in 2013, and the first 18 months was really about getting the business back into a mode where it was generating cash, reducing the costs, and then using that as a base to grow the company to what it is today.
I mean, you talk about mines, and I mean, people who've been in the gold mining industry remember the names of shafts. In 1994, the day Nelson Mandela was released from prison, 23 out of the top 40 companies on the JSE were gold mining companies.
That's correct.
The gold mining sector is such a minuscule part of the South African economy now. I mean, what reserves do you have as Sibanye-Stillwater in South Africa that are even mineable anymore?
You know, we still have significant reserves as a mining company and actually as a country. We have 30 million ounces and we produce just over 1 million ounces a year. You know, so that's 25 to 30 years of life. Obviously, as you get smaller, you do lose reserves because they become uneconomical to mine. The problem is that the South African mining industry has got deeper. There's been incredible inflationary pressures from a cost point of view relating to wages, electricity and so on. So, and we've really been in quite a stagnant gold price environment for the last few years. So we've seen an enormous margin squeeze, and that's detracting from life and sustainability. Depth is an issue. I would argue that technology will be developed somewhere in the future. Certainly, I think we are very careful about going deeper. We've got quite a lot of organic growth on secondary reefs. We are in a sunset phase. Unfortunately, in my view, it's accelerating. It doesn't need to be. If Eskom was properly run and electricity prices were properly controlled, we would be in a much better position. Growth in the gold sector in South Africa is limited, and in fact that's one of the reasons we looked at moving into the PGM sector.
We'll talk about that in just a moment, because I mean, South Africa probably produces 90% less gold today than it did at the peak in the 1980s, when we were one of the world's major gold producers. I think we produced 40% of all of the world's gold then, and today we produce about 5%. You describe it as a sunset industry, and you as Sibanye Gold potentially with a 30-year lifespan. It feels, though, considerably shorter than that, considering that the deeper you go, the more mechanized you have to go, the fewer jobs you create, the less opportunity there is, possibly the more hostile the environment becomes.
Yes, certainly, and to go deeper we need compacts between labour and government. Certainly the risks associated with deep level mining are frowned upon today. It's not as it was 20 or 30 years ago.
What's your deepest mine? How deep do you go?
Well, we're mining at about 4,000 meters below surface.
That's 4 kilometers.
That's 4 kilometers below
the ground.
Yes, and And we've been mining in that environment for the last 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years. So it's an environment we understand, but it is a difficult environment, but it's not a competitive position to be in internationally. Internationally, there are much better gold reserves to mine that are shallower, cost structures that are better, and it's a business, and if you can't be competitive, then it's not going to work. Practically, our life of mine is probably more about 15 to 20 years, but the 30 years really came from 30 million ounces at a million ounces a year. There's potentially 30 years of life.
In terms of Sibanye-Stillwater, what percentage then of your profits come from gold versus platinum group metals, the PGMs?
Well, I'm very pleased to say that having built the company off, let's say, non-core gold assets that were unbundled out of goldfields, today only 25% of our EBITDA actually comes out of gold. The other 75% comes out of PGMs. Of that, 2/3 of it is actually out of the US, so 50% of our EBITDA now comes out of the US. We've been able to geographically diversify quite nicely, and the other 25% comes out of our South African PGM business.
You looked at coal at one point. I mean, you dabbled in coal. Was it just too fraught with corruption, fraud, complexity, the Eskom issues, the Guptas, the Shivas, all of these issues to take seriously? Because the nice thing about gold and platinum is it's globally marketed, whereas coal very much domestic demand.
Yes, Bruce, exactly what you said. We looked at coal. We're an energy-intensive business. There were merits in somehow providing a hedge against these escalating electricity costs. What we did realize is that we were not going to really be able to feature in coal. We were politically not appropriately connected. We weren't prepared to do some of the things that were clearly happening, and we really just moved away from the coal sector.
Has that environment changed? I mean, would you consider going into coal in a new dispensation?
I don't think we would. I think the other thing we realized, once we made a significant entry into PGMs, platinum and coal just do not go together. Platinum is related to environmentally clean initiatives, catalytic converters, catalysts in industries, medical supplies and so on. And you cannot promote yourself in the PGM sector where you're associated with a product like coal. So it's unlikely we would ever contemplate going back into coal.
We're talking to Neil Froneman, who is the Chief Executive of Sibanye-Stillwater. Coming up in a moment, we need to talk about the hot-button issues of the moment. We've got a context on what the company is and what it does and where it operates and how it operates. But for nearly 3 months now, workers across its platinum businesses in South Africa have been looking at their colleagues in the gold sector, the gold part of Sibanye-Stillwater, and a strike that is nearly 3 months old, and it's threatening to spill over. More on that, and of course the thorny issues around the mining charter with Neil Froneman in a moment.